Three, two, and we are live. Hey, and welcome again to Hoshi's Cineastic Corner. And I'm here today with our good friend Keith. Hi, Keith.
Hi, how you doing?
And yeah, today we are talking horror movies to watch during the
Yes.
pandemic.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you already said you were looking at a few TV shows mostly, but the first movie like we were both into was The Thing. So what's
Oh,
about The Thing?
yes. The Thing. I mean, came out during one of the best years ever in movies, 1982.
That's true.
Um, I mean, The Thing is just a John Carpenter classic. Um, and kind of appropriate, I think, during during this time. I actually usually really like to watch The Thing in winter, the first snowfall of the year, and kind of when it's a little cold inside the house, and I usually throw the Blu-ray of The Thing on and watch that movie. But I think, with everything that's kind of going on and kind of people being trapped, quarantined in their houses, I think it's also quite appropriate to watch The Thing at this time as well.
Yeah, I think claustrophobic movies are now really a thing for me also. So that's also why I rewatched The Thing because it's really claustrophobic because also the area gets smaller and smaller
Yes,
during the movie.
exactly.
Uh,
And it definitely feels like the walls are coming in a little bit,
yeah,
and
exactly,
it's
exactly.
so yeah, absolutely. No,
And
it's
and
it's it's a classic.
and the great thing is, you can rewatch it, and the special effects are still awesome.
Yeah, it definitely holds up. And also, I mean, the more you watch it, the more kind of things like the more detail that you can pick up in the background too. I always try to like look at different things when I watch the movie, different parts of the screen, and try to pick up some more clues on as to who was assimilated when and where and
Mm.
what characters were sort of taken over. And yeah, I always find something new when I rewatch the thing for
Yeah.
sure.
Um, why do you think that The Thing back in the time was not such a hit, and now it's such a
Um,
high-rated classic on even on IMDb? It's I think number two or three on the best
yeah,
horror movie list.
I think one of the biggest reasons was that a little film called E.T. came out that same
Yeah,
year,
true, true.
and everybody was into friendly aliens. And I think that once people realized that this movie was about an evil alien, or the movie was a little gorier, or
Yeah,
whatever, the movie just didn't do as well. But of course, as you and I know, the movie over the years just became a huge cult classic. I mean, everything from the Ennio Morricone soundtrack to
yeah, true.
to Kurt Russell's performance. I mean, the movie for me stands the test of time. Like you said, the special effects are outstanding. They definitely hold up still today. Um, and I was a bit disappointed. Like, I don't know if you saw the prequel
Yeah, yeah, I saw
to
that.
to the thing.
Yeah,
Apparently, they wanted to do all kinds of practical effects for this movie, and they shot a bunch of practical effects for this movie. Of course, if anybody hasn't seen it, there was a if you remember the Norwegian camp from the original film, they did a prequel about everything that happened in that camp.
exactly.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
it's not a terrible movie, but I really wish they'd gone a bit more practical in some of the effects. They went back and reshot a lot of the stuff and used CG for it, and it
Yeah,
just for me it just dates the movie and just not as good.
yeah. I thought the overall movie was good.
Yep.
With the prequel, but as you say, the effects actually to me some of them look more cheesy than in the
I
original thing.
I completely agree. I completely agree. But look. I'm also a huge Kurt Russell fan, so I follow Kurt Russell's career
Mm.
quite a lot, and
So
the fact that
you
he
liked him at Elvis as Elvis?
I actually did like him as Elvis because that's
Yeah,
a John
me too.
Carpenter movie,
Me too.
and I actually think his performance as Elvis is still one of the better performances of
Exactly. Yeah.
Elvis. He also played an Elvis impersonator in a movie that maybe not everybody knows or has heard of with Kevin Costner. It's called 3,000 Miles to Graceland.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
play Elvis impersonators that
That's a
pull
great movie
a
too. Yeah.
it, and I love that movie. But no, I mean that's how I really sort of got into um, liking Kurt Russell as an actor was all the stuff he was in with John Carpenter, like Escape from New York and Big Trouble in Little China, which is still one of my Big Trouble in Little China is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah. Me
But
too. Yeah.
so that got me into kind of Kurt Russell's career, which of course led me to the Thing. And again, it's a movie. Like I said, I try to visit at least once a year for snowfall. Since we didn't get much snowfall here, I live in Austria, which is I mean, it's quite surprising we haven't gotten much snow where I live. But usually the first snowfall, like I said, I pop that movie in, you know, get under a blanket
Yeah.
and just
Very
get
true.
taken away.
Yeah. If I knew that they liked Big Trouble in Little China so much, I would have worn my Jack Burton Pork Chop Express T-shirt because that's one of my holy T-shirts that I got.
You know what Jack Burton always says at a time like this, right?
Yeah.
But
But
yeah,
coming back to the thing, a movie
yeah,
actually that's also very claustrophobic for me, and also the special effects hold up even though it's an old movie is Alien.
Alien, Jaws in space.
Yeah, and the funny thing for me is I rewatched Alien,
Hmm.
and then I did the thing that I actually didn't want to do. I rewatched Alien Covenant
So
just to
not
get
a
the
fan
feel.
of the not a fan of the prequels, are you?
No, because even the special effects,
Mm.
you see so little of the alien in the original Alien movie, but what you see is like it's so well done with this slime and everything.
Yes.
It's done so well, and in Alien Covenant, it's just like a bad action movie. So it's not like it's not like in Aliens where it's a good
Mm.
action movie because also you don't see like man in rubber suit. You don't. It doesn't feel like man in rubber suits.
Right, right, and the interesting thing about Aliens, which I mean is a war movie, and
Yeah,
I love that each of the Alien films kind of takes a different genre.
yeah,
Same thing with Indiana Jones. Each Indiana Jones movie is kind of pulled from a different genre. But the thing about Aliens is that I think they only had seven of those alien suits, and you think that you're watching 100 of them.
yeah.
You know
Exactly.
what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah.
and they look fantastic. But again, I'm of the old school notion that it's not what you see that's scary. It's what lies just beyond that shadow. What's in that other dark room over there? Again,
Mm,
like a movie like Halloween, The Shape, Michael
yeah,
Myers. You don't
exactly.
really
Yeah.
see him throughout the movie. But you know he's a force. He's there. It's the same with Alien. And when you do finally get to see it, it's just this horrific thing. And I'm not sure if it ever even made it into the final um, cut of the movie. I guess I don't know. Is the costume like? I think the alien head was kind of a skull
Mm,
too. Like it was almost like a see-through, translucent kind of costume. And for the final costume, I think eventually it kind of was just more black. But I remember seeing some pictures from the original Giger artwork
mm,
where it was like a half-formed skull inside of the head, and that always freaked me out. I thought that that was just brilliant.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Alien is just so atmospheric and so creepy, and again, amazing soundtrack. I'm a big soundtrack collector. You want to talk about feeling trapped somewhere in the middle of nowhere space truckers, right? It's a
Yeah.
bunch of group of truckers in space that are trapped while this horrific thing kills them off one by one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great
Talk,
movie.
talking about all these movie classics, if you look back on horror movies, what's actually a lot of horror movies that resonate with me and that you can watch and we rewatch all the time are actually movies that were made before the 2000s.
Yeah.
Wha- What is your take on that? Why is that a thing? Because I don't really get it. Why things like Alien or The Thing don't happen in that quality anymore?
That's a really good question. I think that um, fear is something that's so primal within all of us, and it seemed that in the 60s, 70s, 80s, a lot of filmmakers were able to tap into that a bit better, and I think they actually had a bit more of of an artistic freedom to express um, to express that on screen, especially some of the things that they grew up with, some of the things that they were inspired by, maybe just even things that happened in their lives that they were able to kind of express on the screen. Um, I think that a lot of stuff that has come afterwards, after the 2000s, has been hmm, a lot more having to do with making more money and keeping certain things going than to put a quality story on the screen, or something that will really tap into that primal urge instead of just a jump cut or a jump scare, or a cue of music that will make you
Mm-hmm.
jump out of your seat, as opposed to seeing a little girl possessed by a demon on a bed
Mm.
and people trying to save her. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just it's also stylistically very different from what we had 30 or 40 years ago than what we have today.
Mm-hmm.
I think films are more of a product today than they were then. I think they were slightly more artistic. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of great films coming out today, things that are very entertaining, but I mean, there's definitely, I think, um, a lot less than there were, um, again, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, that's true. Because I think maybe one of the reasons is also is the problem that CGI and special effects are so good and so readily available today that you get
Right.
into the mood like doing just the next splatter porn movie or something like that, and
Yes.
you don't focus really. You only focus on the shocking things,
Right. Like
and
jump
not.
scares,
Yeah,
things like
exactly.
that. Yeah. And
And
I
not
mean,
not
one
like
thing,
I mean there are gory movies back then. Like for example,
absolutely.
I rewatched Suspiria
Oh,
from
yes.
Dario Argento,
Yes.
and the special effects are, some of them are really bad, but that movie scares the shit out of me.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And it's something that just like taps into you, like something that's very like, oh my goodness, like you're watching something that you shouldn't be watching. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Today it doesn't feel, maybe of course, I'm a little older, I'm a little jaded, I've seen lots of movies, so maybe it's just a little like I'm sort of used to it, maybe desensitized to it. I don't know. But something that drives me absolutely crazy is CG blood splattering. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
when you watch a horror movie and you see that CG blood, come out, and it's just like, oh, guys, you couldn't put one squib, like you couldn't,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
like just one. Um, but stuff like that, and I'm not saying like what CG artists do isn't, it's fantastic stuff what these
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
do, and it's
exactly.
definitely a craft and a trade, and these guys are very talented. But I'm of old, I'm of the old school again. Of I prefer practical effects. There's nothing like watching like a movie like the Terminator and seeing that chassis rise up from the flame, and
Yeah.
you know it's there, that they built that. Stan Winston built that thing, like, and then you watch the most recent Terminator movie and it's just a CG fest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So stuff like that.
Yeah, if CG blends well with practical effects, then I think it's really good.
Absolutely.
But as you say, if
Absolutely.
you do everything in CG, then it's just sometimes laughable. For example,
Ye-
compare um, the first R-rated version from Die Hard
Mm-hmm.
with all the blood squibs and everything, which was all was done practical,
Yes.
and it looked really shocking. I mean, it's not a horror movie, but it was shocking bullet impacts and stuff like that, or the
Sure.
old John Woo movies or something like that.
RoboCop.
RoboCop,
When the
yeah,
Remember when the Ed 209 shoots the guy
yeah,
in the in the
absolutely,
office,
yeah,
and you're just like, oh my god, it's so over the top with like with blood shooting out of the guy, and you're like, oh my goodness,
yeah.
yeah. And now it's like they would just
And
they
then
would just
then
plug.
then there is no love for detail anymore. Like I
Right.
didn't even remember what action movie I saw last, but there was some movie where they had like CGI blood spray,
Yeah.
but then when the guy was lying on the ground, there was actually no blood around him at all.
Yeah.
So all
It
this stuff,
drives me
it's
crazy.
laughable. Yeah, I mean it's
It
details,
is.
but
It
it's
is.
laughable. So
And again, it's not every movie that does that, but I do feel like it's a lot of movies have budgets, and sometimes you got to crank these things out. I totally get it, but there's definitely something that's being lost, in the final product for me when I see stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. Actually, a movie that was done in the 2000s was what I really liked from a suspense and also from the pandemic outbreak standpoint was 28 Days Later.
I love 28 Days Later. I actually even like the sequel too. The sequel's not a great movie, but the first movie is fantastic. The Danny Boyle, I love Danny Boyle and his
Yeah, yeah.
movies. But 28 Days Later is kind of again another movie that is pretty much on point right now as far as what's going on in our world. But again, a great sense of kind of like of isolation. Him waking up and walking through London, and there's just nobody around. That's what a lot of our cities are looking like right now, completely empty. So another. Yeah, for me, that's also a classic. 28 Days Later, and they're not zombies, right? They're infected.
Exactly. Yeah, they're infected. Yeah.
So we make sure that that's clear. They're infected.
And I
So
like the fact that they're more mobile than for example, the Romero zombies.
makes it a bit scarier,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, like and speaking of Romero zombies, you want to talk about another classic is Day of the Dead. I
Yeah.
mean, all Night of the Living Dead and Dawn are classics, but Day of the Dead, my favorite of that original Romero trilogy. Very another,
Yeah, I
sense of
agree.
isolation. They're trapped in an underground military installation. The opening of the movie where they're trying to find survivors in the
Mm.
city, and it's just another another classic.
Yeah, all these Romero zombie movies have like, except the like the last one, I can't even remember because I thought it was bad. But
Survival of the Dead, I think, was the last one he made.
okay,
Survival of that's the one where
I
they're on
think
the island, I think.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah,
Yeah, that's Survival of the Dead, which
yeah,
I wasn't a big fan of either. I
yeah,
actually think the last real good one he made was Land of the Dead, which I enjoyed.
yeah.
I
That
thought
was
it was
okay. Yeah, it was not
it
the
was a
best,
fun
but it was
movie.
fun. Yeah,
But I mean, this latest trilogy that he did wasn't quite. I mean, he loved to touch on like political
mm,
topics of the time, and I just felt like they didn't quite land.
that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but Day of the Dead, absolutely
Classic.
amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing.
I love
And
that movie. Great soundtrack too.
yeah, because I think a great soundtrack makes the suspense of the movie, and
Yes.
that's also claustrophobic movie that I really love is Prince of Darkness, and it has
Another Carpenter classic. Actually, I think it's one of his most underrated movies.
I think so too because it's actually my top two favorite Carpenter movies are Prince of Darkness and Big Trouble in Little China. That's my absolute favorites,
Hmm.
and
Some good choices there.
and Prince of Darkness actually also because of the soundtrack.
Yes.
It draws you in so much, and this cut scenes that he has at the beginning and at the end of the movie, they are
Mm.
really
Very
really
eerie.
eerie. Yeah,
Very eerie stuff. Again, also visually just shocking, and like some of the
yeah,
stuff that you see in that movie is just so like whoa. But yeah, I think Prince of Darkness is very overlooked. You know, when you think of John Carpenter, you think of, again, you know, The Thing and Big Trouble in Little China and Halloween and Escape from New York and so on,
Yeah.
and Christine even. But Prince of Darkness is, if you haven't seen that one in a long time, I would definitely say to, or if you've never seen it, definitely pop that one in. Same thing, a group of people researching an event in a church. So also a feeling of isolation and a lot of people sort of trapped in a small area. For all of you people that that are stuck in quarantine right now, to get a bit more of it too, in your movies as well.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely check out Prince of Darkness.
yeah, or a movie like for people with kids, like Rosemary's Baby or something like that.
Rosemary's Baby is, that's yeah, that's an interesting movie
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
Or
I've seen it.
the Omen
I've seen it
trilogy.
once. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's but those are not movies like they don't stick with. I think my brother, for example, he loves the Omen movies.
Yeah,
But I think they're okay, but they're not my favorite uh, horror
I
movies from the
really,
time.
I really like the first Omen movie.
Yeah, first one is great.
Um,
Yeah,
First one's great. I like things about the second Omen movie, but what I don't like, I'm very much a detailed oriented person when it comes to continuity in my movies, especially if it's a trilogy or, you know, sequels, anything like that. And the Omen's continuity between films is so bad and so off, it takes me out of the movie.
yeah,
It takes me out. And the third movie had Sam Neill in it, and another you know, who's in another Carpenter movie, in The Mouth of Madness, which is another, I think, the last great Carpenter movie, but not a great Carpenter movie. But Sam Neill's in Omen 3, and again, it's not a terrible movie, but it just somehow in the timeline doesn't fit in with the other ones, and so that stuff always takes me out of those movies.
mm,
But I love the original Omen. It's a classic. It's a very disturbing movie, but that stands also stands the test of time, like you said, with like movies like The Exorcist and Alien and Jaws. When you think of classic horror, those are the ones that definitely come up for sure.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or like all the 70s horror movies. They
Hmm.
are all. I think a lot of them are rewatchable, like Wicker Man or Phantasm or stuff
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
I'm Phantasm. I'm a huge Phantasm fan. I have that Arrow video collection that's collected in the Sphere,
Ah, yeah.
and I love all of those movies from the first one to the fifth one. Every single one of them for me
Yeah, I have
is
the
great.
Blu-ray collector's box where the sphere is on top.
Yeah, yeah, that's the one I have. It's
Yeah,
fantastic. Big fan of Phantasm. Again, another another great soundtrack for that movie as well. Definitely pulls you right in, and the imagery in that movie of, like, you know, of Angus Scrimm as the tall man, and, you know, him through.
yeah,
I'll never forget the first time I saw, you know, the first time I saw that movie, and he picks up the coffin and just throws it in the back of the hearse, and
yeah.
I was like, what am I
What?
watching? What
Yeah,
is this? You
exactly. Yeah.
know, it's just, it's really great,
Yeah, and the
really
first
great
time
stuff.
you actually see the sphere, it's amazing. You say,
Oh
what's
yes, oh
going on
yes,
there? It's
and that's a practical effect. I mean,
yeah,
if you look closely, I don't know how it is now in the Blu-rays, but in the original, I had Phantasm on VHS as a kid, yeah,
mm,
and you could see all of the people, like the crew, filming the sphere,
yeah,
you
yeah. You
know.
can see it
So,
in the
and
reflection. Yeah,
I think in the Blu-ray they might have digitally
I think they
erased that
removed
or
them.
took
Yeah,
it out.
yeah, yeah,
I think they removed it,
yeah.
which is that's so sad for me. You know, I because I always used to just be like, oh, I see a guy in the, you know what I mean? Pretty fun stuff. But no, I absolutely love Phantasm.
Yeah, yeah. And the movie that so we have my top three Carpenter movies.
Yep.
The first one was Prince of Darkness, then Big Trouble in Little China, and the third one that I really love is The Fog.
Oh, the Fog is good. The
And
Fog has one of the best openings.
yeah, the opening and the real sinister soundtrack.
Yes.
this is so scary. The when all the time when the fog moves in on this on the beach, the soundtrack is
Hmm.
so sinister and scary. It's you don't even have to know that there is something in the fog because the the soundtrack is so crazily scary for me. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's this impending doom that's
Yeah.
coming towards you. I have the LP cover of the soundtrack to The Fog hanging up on my wall. It's
Ah,
the
yeah.
cover with Jamie Lee Curtis
Yeah,
standing
yeah.
in front of the door. I love that cover. It's for me, it's such a classic horror image. And I love the story behind The Fog. How John Carpenter at the time, he was with oh my goodness, I can't believe I forgot her name. His partner at the time, I guess his writing partner. She helped write Halloween and so on, and basically I think they were at Stonehenge or something, and they saw a fog in the distance, and they were like, we should write a horror movie
Mm,
about this, you know.
yeah, yeah.
So what we they were wondering what's in that fog, and yeah, I guess we found out with the movie. It's a classic. The ghost story that he tells in the beginning, it's really really good.
What do you actually think about the Mist?
So which Mist are we talking about? Are we talking about the Netflix series The Mist
No, no,
or
the movie,
the Darabont
the
movie?
Darabont movie. Yeah, yeah,
I love it.
yeah. Me too.
And it has one of the most depressing endings I think I've ever seen in a film.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. The whole movie is so suspenseful, and I actually watched the black and white version.
Yes, I wanted to
I love
mention
that.
that. The black and white version, I think, is superior. It gives it
Yeah.
a little bit of a 1950s B movie feel to it, which I think is what essentially he was going for. But fantastic. I love The Mist.
And the co-writer from John Carpenter is Deborah Hill. Now I
Oh,
remember.
Deborah Hill. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, yeah,
Deborah Hill from Haddonfield, New Jersey.
yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Of course, which is where Haddonfield, Illinois, came from in Halloween. Yes, thank you, Deborah Hill. I can't. As a Carpenter fan, I feel embarrassed that I that I forgot that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, me too.
No.
It's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't get it. And now thinking about the mist actually brought me to the rail. So
Yeah.
you have to
Uh,
think about something different to get to it.
exactly. Like, eventually, you'll come back to it. I'm sure it would have popped in my head eventually, but I still haven't seen the Netflix Mist yet.
Me neither. Me neither. But I
Okay.
always wanted to watch it, but I'm a little bit scared actually to watch it because I think like I have these expectations because I think the movie is so great.
Yeah, it's
That
the same with me.
yeah.
I kind of feel like I got such a good experience. I had such a good experience watching the Mist film that I don't think I really need to check out the Netflix series. I mean, I may be wrong. I may be missing out, but at the time, there's so much more stuff that can be watched. I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. And yeah, a few other. What do you actually think when we are at Carpenter movies about In the Mouth of Madness?
So, like I mentioned before, I think In the Mouth of Madness is the last great Carpenter movie, but it's not a great Carpenter movie. It's just how I feel. Like I can revisit that movie, and I always kind of come out with more questions than I had the last time I saw it. Um, I enjoy it. I enjoy the music in it. I enjoy the performances in it. I like the story, but there's just something about that movie that sort of doesn't sit right with me when I watch it all the way through. And I enjoy it while I watch it. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's enjoyable. It's a fun movie. I actually kind of like Village of the Damned too. I never thought that was that movie gets a bad rap as well, but I
Yeah,
don't think it's a great movie. But and it's not better than the original Village of the Damned, that's for sure. But I kind of like that movie as well. But In the Mouth of Madness, I have a love hate relationship with that movie. And I really love the opening of it. I love the music, which was
mm,
supposed to be Metallica that opened that movie, but I guess they were too expensive, and so John Carpenter decided I'll do it myself, and kind of covered Enter Sandman, and that's the piece of music that we get over the opening credits of In the Mouth of Madness, which I love. When the book is being printed and so on, I love that. And then by the time the movie ends, I'm kind of like, what?
Yeah,
You know,
it leaves you with a lot of questions. Yeah.
yeah. I don't mind a movie that leaves you with questions. I mind a movie that leaves you with too many questions, and that movie is like, wait a minute, like you know what I mean? Like, there's just so many levels to that movie, and that could be either seen as a plus or a negative. I don't know, but for me, every time I watch it, I still just can't quite figure that movie out. But it's definitely it's definitely up there
Yeah, yeah.
with Carpenter's. But I mean, I'm a huge Escape from New York fan. What about you?
Yeah, me too. Me too. Escape from New York, absolutely awesome. I even enjoyed Escape from LA. It's
Me too.
it's many people give it a bad rap and everything, but I think it's not that bad.
I I
I mean, it's
agree. I
over
mean,
the top,
that's what
and
it's supposed to
but
be.
it was yeah, it's supposed to be that. Yeah? It's
LA is
like
over the top.
yeah,
LA
exactly,
is over the top. So you
exactly.
know,
Yeah,
it's like that movie was a spoof on a spoof of a. You know what I mean? Like there was
yeah,
so much stuff in that movie that you're supposed to be like, this is ridiculous. But I actually really enjoy it, and I love the music. Kurt Russell's is always awesome as Snake. I really wish we
mm,
would have gotten that third part.
yeah.
Escape from Earth. You know, that would have been so cool. Um, who knows? Maybe I had a chance to meet John Carpenter a couple of times at a couple of events. I met him for the first time at the DGA in New York City. He screened Ghosts of Mars, which that is just an awful movie. But I got to meet John Carpenter that day, and we had a conversation. And I said, "When are we going to see Snake again?" And he said, "As soon as they pay me enough money."
Mm,
So that was Carpenter's deal way back in the day. You know, we talk about loving the art, but also it's a business. You know, so
yeah, that's true. Because but even if when he does business, like for example with the Ward,
hmm
I actually enjoyed that movie. It's not written
the
by
war.
him. It's like a director's gig for him. Yeah,
Yeah,
that he did
yeah,
on the side or something. But
right.
but I actually really enjoyed that movie. So
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. Again, not my favorite Carpenter. I watched it once and I said, yeah, I'm good. You know, it's not one that I need to revisit like Escape from New York or Big Trouble in Little China or
exactly.
so I don't need to really revisit it, but it was fine. It was fine. And again, it's like what we're talking about. A lot of the modern day horror is hit and miss for me.
Mm,
Um, Movies like I'm quite excited about the new Candyman. I really liked movies like Get Out and
yeah,
Us. I thought they were good. I think that they're bringing something kind of sort of fresh to horror.
yeah.
Um,
I
and
actually liked
again,
Babadook.
I still haven't seen it. I
You
have the
haven't?
DVD
Okay.
here. I haven't seen it
You
yet,
have to
but
see it. It's I think it's
yeah,
really great.
I remember you telling me about that movie
Yeah.
when we were all shopping for films that
Yeah,
one day.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right. So I took your recommendation and I bought it, but I still haven't watched it yet. But I'm looking forward to watching
Yeah,
it.
because it caught me also by surprise. Like I think it was in a sale or something where I got the DVD or Blu-ray,
Okay.
and just snatched it and thought, okay, well, I give that a watch, and and then it caught me really by surprise because I was expecting like another new age, a new agey horror that not really pulls me in, but that
Yeah.
one actually really has done the job. So I really like that.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll definitely check it out. Like I said, I mean, there's a good buddy of mine who lives in Graz, and he's a big horror fan as well. And usually, he'll buy a lot of DVDs and Blu-rays and so on. And
Mm.
when he's done with them, like he doesn't have a lot of space in his flat and stuff, so he usually just give them to me or something like that. And so he gave me movies like Hereditary and a lot of
Mm.
these other like horror films that I would never ever like go out and like The Void and stuff like that. I would never
Mm.
buy on my own.
What do you
And
think
so
about of Hereditary?
I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I thought it was a very original, creepy story. And again, the performances were very good. I just kind of feel like I've seen it all at this point.
Yeah,
You know
exactly.
what
Yeah.
I mean? Like I just feel like there's not really much that can get me anymore. And that's
Mm.
I think why to kind of go back to what we were talking about before. I think that's why they try to go for the jump scares. And they really try to like get you to jump that way and to get you to get that feeling because there's not a lot of stuff out there that people haven't seen. You know
Mm.
what I mean? So maybe it's just another way of, to get people scared or to get a reaction out of them.
Yeah.
Um,
But even with like um, scary, funny for funny, scary, jumpy movies, yeah,
mm,
the older ones reflect much more with me. Like,
hmm
for example, if you take one of the classic new splatterporn movies like Saw or something, it's
mm.
just like, bleh, yeah, I don't really like it, yeah. But for example, old one like Reanimator
Reanimator's great.
is it's also. I mean, it's trashy. It's
Hmm
it's it's a not really well made movie,
No,
but
it's not.
but
Um,
it's awesome.
yeah, again, it's something that kind of stays with you.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of horror movies that I watched as a kid that stays with me. I mean, again, I I grew up watching a lot of movies, a lot of horror movies in the 80s. So of course, I grew up in the US, so a lot of slasher movies were very popular at the time during the 80s. I kind of became obsessed with Friday the 13th. I wasn't allowed to see them.
Mm,
I was kind of forbidden, but I would always go to the video store. The guys that worked at the video store would let me rent them. I'd have to
like
watch them, before my mom got home from work. And so, yeah, I mean, there we go right there. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Friday the 13th and
yeah,
Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff like that. I mean, for me, that was the horror that I was growing up with.
yeah. And not to
The
forget,
fir-
Friday the 13th, you always had boobies in it.
that well, of course. I mean, you definitely get to see stuff that you wouldn't normally get to see on normal TV. Again, the stuff that you were kind of forbidden to see. So I remember just being absolutely frightened of Jason and
Yeah,
Freddy, and like I remember specifically
yeah.
being over at
First
a
Nightmare
friend's
on Elm
house.
Street. Yeah,
Oh yeah, and they were watching Nightmare on Elm Street 2 on
mm,
VHS, and they just had it on in the background, and I averted my eye. I didn't want to see it. I thought Freddy was absolutely frightening. Like when I was a kid, he was
yeah.
very scary to me. Um, and so that for me was kind of like my entry point into horror was a lot of slasher movies. Like I said, Friday the 13th, Halloween, the classic slasher, even Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Yeah,
which that
yeah.
series is just completely bizarre and way
Exactly. Yeah.
throw all continuity out the window. But that's kind of what I grew up with, and from there, you get into other stuff, and you kind of get,
Yeah.
you get exposed to other things, and yeah, from there, my knowledge
Actually,
just grew.
a very suspenseful film from the 2000 now comes to my mind. I think it's from 2004 or 2005. Is The Descent.
Oh yeah, The Descent is great.
That's one of the few movies that really drew me in because it's very suspenseful. You don't see a lot of the creatures or something, and
who directed that? Was that Neil Marshall?
I
I think it was. I think, and he also directed a movie called
yeah, yeah,
Dog
yeah,
Soldiers.
Neil Marshall. Yeah, yeah. Dog
Have you ever
Soldiers is
seen
a Dog Soldiers is a classic. I love it. Yeah,
Dog Soldiers? You want to talk about another, like a modern horror classic, is Dog Soldiers. And if you haven't seen that movie, watch it. It's a
yeah.
great werewolf movie with a bunch of soldiers in Scotland. And that's a fantastic movie. That got me actually into Neil Marshall. And then when I saw the Descent come out, I didn't get to see it in the theater, but I got the Blu-ray, and then because I'm myself, I'm a little claustrophobic, and I really hate tight places or being in places with a lot of people,
Yeah.
and to watch the descent was, oh my goodness,
Extremely
like you just
scary. Yeah.
felt it. You felt every moment that they were, going through those small little areas.
And
Very scary. I thought the creature effects were great.
yeah.
I still haven't seen the sequel
Me
because
neither. Me neither.
wasn't there there was a
I think
descent
that
too,
yeah, I
right?
think there was a Descent too, but I never watched it because I thought the first film was so perfectly scary for me
I agree. I
that I
agree.
didn't actually want to watch it because I think a few people told me it's not that good, and so I didn't
Yeah.
want to spoil like the first one with the second one. And both the Descent and Dog Soldiers have a few things in them which are for me extremely hard to get into a scene, which is a
Mm.
really scary scene that ends with a laugh.
Yes.
Like in Dog
Yeah.
Soldiers, when he's lying in bed with his open belly, and then he cries out sausages. I mean, it's
Yes.
hilarious.
It's
It's
yeah. I mean,
it's
if you can
so
get a good
crazy.
laugh, I mean, you know what I mean? Because the laugh is the
Yeah,
it
exactly.
kind of takes you back down. Like, oh
Yeah,
no, I'm really safe. Oh, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So yeah, Neil Marshall's really good at that. He's really really good at that. I think he also made a post apocalyptic movie called Doomsday. I remember not really being so much into that movie, but the
Actually, I
Descent and
don't
Doc.
think I didn't see it,
Yeah, Doomsday
but
is not great. It's not great. It's okay. It's
but
kind of a weird mix of Mad Max meets like kind of
he
28
actually
Days Later.
he did actually direct two of my favorite episodes of Game of Thrones,
Hmm.
like the Blackwater battle
Mm.
and the Watchers on the Wall,
Uh,
which are
you're gonna you're gonna you're gonna laugh at me right now,
actually
or be extremely shocked or surprised, but I still have not seen one episode of Game of Thrones.
okay. But you have to watch it. It's really good. I mean, I
Yeah,
was
I
saying
mean,
that the last season is not the best one, but I think it's a great series. Um, but he actually directed two of those great episodes, and also he directed two episodes of the Netflix Lost in Space uh,
oh, another series I haven't
series,
seen yet, but a
which
lot
is
of
really fun.
people, yeah,
I
yeah,
really like it because it takes the whole Lost in Space concept in a totally different direction
cool,
from like
cool.
the old movies,
Hmm.
and that's really good. And also there are two episodes that are really impactful. One of them is called Impact, that he directed, and he also gets like this. You have like this suspenseful moments in it,
Hmm.
and but also this like relief moments, which
Mm.
come so because when you've reached the breaking point, you need some kind of relief.
You need some relief,
Yeah,
yeah. You like definitely, absolutely.
Neil Marshall gets it really good.
And I mean, speaking of like having some laughs in your movies, one of my favorite horror comedy series, Evil Dead.
Yeah,
Again, group of people trapped in a house. Something's
exactly.
trying to get in. You know what I mean? Evil Dead's fantastic. I love Evil Dead 2. I love Army of Darkness. I thought Ash versus Evil Dead was a pretty
Awesome.
good continuation of the series.
Yeah.
Awesome series. Kind of sad that got that got canceled after 3 seasons. I thought the way they ended that could have been very interesting.
Mm.
But yeah, another great group of movies to watch while trapped inside.
Yep, very true because they are really claustrophobic again. Like especially the first one. The second one is more fun.
Yeah, the first one's a like straight up horror
Yeah,
movie. Like
exactly. Yeah,
and a lot of stuff in that movie. Again, I saw it as a young man, and I saw a lot of stuff I wasn't supposed to see in that movie.
yeah,
And it definitely freaked me out. But then Evil Dead 2, you're like, wait a minute, what's this supposed to be now?
yeah.
Very cool stuff.
It
But
catches you
then
by surprise too. Yeah, yeah.
it does catch you by surprise for sure. And then, of course, as we know, Army of Darkness is just an all around classic
Yeah.
of comedy and just, again, amazing practical effects. If you go back, you could definitely see how they were able to kind of use a low budget and make it be funny at the same time. Like you see some of the skeletons just sort of like attached to poles in the background and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just great. It's
Yeah.
it's really really good.
Very true. Yeah. And speaking of when we started out with some like more sci-fi horror movies like The Thing and Alien. One of
Yeah.
the movies I like, which is also partly claustrophobic because they're trapped like on the ship also, is Event Horizon.
Ah, I knew you were going to go there. I was hoping you'd bring up Event Horizon because that movie is such. I kind of feel that that movie's been forgotten a bit, and unjustly.
Yeah,
I love Event Horizon. Another
me
Sam
too.
Neill
Yeah.
movie. Event Horizon's great. I really think that it kind of got um, it kind of was a mishmash of a lot of different things, like Alien and Hellraiser, and like all of these like really interesting ideas thrown together. A little bit of Solaris mixed in there,
Mm,
like with Sam Neill kind of seeing like those visions of his, I guess, his dead wife, and so a lot of a lot of interesting ideas thrown into one movie. And also very gory and graphic. Interesting soundtrack. I think it was a bit of a kind of a an electronic soundtrack, like from
yeah, yeah.
Orbital bands like Orbital and stuff like that, which is really cool. I loved that movie.
Mm.
Definitely one of Paul. I is it Paul W.S. Anderson?
I think so. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. Who directed like Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. It's probably his best movie.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I mean
but no,
the first Resident Evil was kind of okay.
yeah. I recently watched all of them in a row,
Okay,
and they do progressively get worse. Like in my opinion,
exactly.
like
Yeah.
I liked the first one. I thought the second one wasn't great. I kind of liked the third one. I
Mm,
think the third one was Apocalypse,
yeah,
where they're kind of out in the desert and like all those birds like kind of attack them and stuff
yeah,
like.
because
I
it has this slightly Mad Max feeling. So
Yes, and Mad Max is my favorite series of films.
yeah.
So that little bit of Mad Max in there was enough for me to put that movie over for me. But yeah, I mean, Resident Evil doesn't get very good as they go down the line for me. But I do like their continuity. I like how they're connected. But after the third one,
Mm, true, true. Well, what did you think about Fury Road?
um, well, f- first of all, I think Fury Road is probably one of the greatest action movies ever made.
Mm,
Not even just in the last, say, 20 years. I think ever. I think Mad Max Fury Road is could also be considered one of the greatest sequels of all time, like right up there with like the greats. Um, I was blown away the first time I saw that movie. I actually felt it felt like an experience. And, we're talking about how horror, like a lot of like horror, is sort of getting a slight, rebirth with movies like Us or Get Out or like that. Like it's sort of kind of coming back in its own way. I really feel that Fury Road gave birth to a new generation of action again,
mm,
and I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I left the theater feeling out of breath after
yeah,
after watching that movie, and I immediately said I have to see that again. It still remains to be again also an amazing soundtrack, Junkie XL. That
yeah.
soundtrack
I
is
love it.
fantastic.
It's
Um,
awesome. Yeah.
I could just put that on in the background and just like listen to that thing all day. But I it's not a reboot. It's not it is a sequel. George Miller had a complete backstory. I mean, that movie was designed for and written for an older Mel Gibson to play
Mm,
an older Max. Years after Thunderdome. That was the original intent. There was a comic book that came out that told the story leading up to Fury Road. He fights in Thunderdome again. He rebuilds his car. He wins an engine, things like that. That's why he has the car again at the opening of Fury Road.
mm,
He's wearing that bracelet. That's why he's a bit haunted because he couldn't save a family, a woman and her daughter. That's the girl that he's seeing throughout the movie. It's not his daughter. It's a girl that he couldn't save. He's haunted by the people he can't. I loved all of that. I loved all of that backstory. I thought Tom Hardy did a great job. Just hands down for me, one of
Yeah,
the best action movies ever. And
yeah,
Charlize Theron. I mean, come on, she was incredible.
yeah. She's an incredible actress. I loved her
Unbelievable.
in a lot of movies. So
Oh yes,
the
absolutely.
one movie um with Satan's like lawyer. What was it
Oh,
called?
The Devil's
The
Advocate.
Devil's Advocate. Yeah, love that movie.
Yeah, Keanu
Keanu Reeves.
Reeves.
Yeah,
That's a great movie.
yeah, it's
That's a
awesome.
great movie. Very a little disturbing, that movie,
Exactly. Yeah.
but again, let's talk about another great horror movie. One that doesn't get a lot of it's a lot of notice. I think. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that movie has sort of been forgotten a little bit over the years.
Yeah, yeah,
Devil's
totally.
Advocate, and that's another one that should be revisited. Totally, that's a great movie.
Yeah. Talking about when we were talking about Friday the 13th, something
Yeah.
that actually came to my mind was um, why do you think that so many people like Jason Lives? I think it's part six.
Jason Lives.
I
Yes,
think a lot
it
of
is.
people like regard it as the best Friday the 13th movie, and I always wondered
Um.
why. Because I mean I like the whole franchise, even
Mhm.
out there stuff like Jason X or Freddy versus Jason, or I like
I
them
like
all.
it too.
But
I
but
like all that stuff too.
but I don't get
Um,
it why people like Jason Lives so much.
I think Jason Lives is a bit of a turning point in the series. Like that's where he kind of where Jason gets. I mean, he gets resurrected in every movie. Let's be
Exactly. Yeah.
but he's been dead for a significant amount of time. For let's say maybe 10 years, he's been dead, and he comes back and he's kind of more like a zombie, more like
Mm,
Frankenstein's monster. He gets resurrected from a bolt of lightning that hits him in the chest, and he comes back to life. And it's a bit funnier than the other ones, you know.
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
But while at the same time it still takes Jason very seriously. It
mm,
never makes Jason funny, but it makes the situation, and it kind of pokes fun a little bit at the genre, which I think it needed at the time, because I think when Jason Lives came out, like those movies were kind of running its course a bit.
yeah,
So
that's
they
true. Yeah.
sort of, they sort of needed to do a little something different with it. Like let's make them a little bit funnier. But I mean, there are still moments in Jason Lives that are absolutely frightening and disturbing. Um, so it's not all for laughs, but there are. They wanted to do something a bit different, and I think that they succeeded. It's definitely one of the better ones.
Mm,
Some of my personal favorites from the Friday the 13th series is part four, the final chapter, which of
mm.
course we know is not the final chapter, which is
But
the image of
all,
Jason that I'm wearing today.
the almost
Um,
final chapter, let's call it.
the sort of final chapter, the final chapter for now. But that movie's very dark, very scary. There's a lot of frightening moments in that movie. A lot of funny moments too. Crispin
Mm,
Glover dancing in that. Crispin Glover from Back to the Future dancing in that movie. Seeing Corey Feldman shave his head and kill
mm,
basically a child, kill this unkillable monster. Very interesting movie. I also like part seven, with kind of Jason taking on a Carrie like
mm,
character with psychic powers, and like if you could have a series where there's an unkillable monster, wearing a hockey mask coming after you, why couldn't some of the other characters have like psychic powers or be able to fight you in their dreams, or so it got a bit more supernatural with part seven, and then part eight, Jason Takes Manhattan. I Another kind of movie you could just watch and laugh at. I kind of like Jason Goes to Hell. I like all of them for one reason or another. But
mm,
you know, again, a bit more of a series that I like for a nostalgic reason.
mm.
Not really because they're good movies that um, that give something to our society, you know, but they do in a way. I mean, you see somebody with a hockey mask, you think Friday the 13th. It's ingrained into our pop culture. So, you know, Friday the 13th did that.
Yeah, very true, very true. Yeah, before we wrap it up, the sort of the final question. Of course, this is also a great time for like old creature features. What are your favorite creature features?
Yes, creature features. Well, some of my favorites, I really love a lot of the Universal horror series. I love Creature from the Black Lagoon. That's a
Mm,
trilogy of films that fantastic if you could track those down. Invisible Man. I love the old Thing from Another World. I'm a big fan of the Hammer series
mm,
of horror movies. I love stuff like that. But I mean, a lot of those old monster movies, um, they really have a special place in my heart. Like I even like some of the funnier ones. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, for
yeah,
example.
exactly.
I love
Great
that
one.
movie. You know, if you're looking for a little bit of some classic monsters with a little bit of comedy thrown in there, check out Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. That is an absolute classic. But I mean, you can't really beat the Universal monsters. I grew up watching those guys as well. Dracula, Wolfman.
Mm,
That was another group of films that really sort of got me interested not only just in filmmaking but horror in general.
yeah, yeah. I actually was rewatching. This was a few months ago, actually, not now during the pandemic, but it's some movies that I would also like to watch in winter. I don't know why. Is the old Christopher Lee Dracula movies
Yeah,
because
the Hammer films, they're great.
they're
They're
sometimes so trashy, but
mhm.
they're really fun to watch. So they
They are a lot of fun to watch. I mean, even like the Frankenstein movies,
yeah.
the Hammer Frankenstein movies are just like they're crazy. I loved watching, like I said, the Hammer horror.
Mm,
There's so much good stuff there. Like they just have such a huge library of just classic horror. Their werewolf movies. There's just so much great stuff there. That could be visited and just so well acted. Like movies like The Skull and I love that stuff.
great.
Classic.
Awesome. Yeah, well, Keith, I think we should wrap it up. It
Yep.
was really really fun talking with you horror movies.
Yeah. Same here. Thanks a lot for having me on.
um,
And
I think we'll
yeah.
have to redo it with like action movies or something the next time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were supposed to be talking about horror movies. We wound up talking a lot about about Mad Max and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I think you're right. I
Yeah.
think we're gonna have to do an action stream at some point too.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for everyone who was watching the stream. It also will be on YouTube in a few hours or something like that. As soon as I get the upload done, leave us a like, leave us a subscribe, leave us a follow on the stream. That would be nice. Keith, thanks again for being on the stream.
Thank you for
And
having me.
thanks everyone for watching and see you soon on Hoshi's Corner.